Something might be terribly wrong behind the scenes with the Clarity Act, and I mean terribly wrong. We watched support on Polymarket collapse from 79% odds of the bill getting signed into law in 2026, all the way down to 62%. In just 30 minutes. 30 minutes, people. That is not normal movement. That is somebody knowing something before the rest of us do. And here's what you need to understand about prediction markets like Polymarket. Things tend to happen there before they're officially announced anywhere else. Smart money moves first. The news follows. So when I see a drop like that sharp, that fast, I start making calls. And today, I have updates for you. I have updates from key senators. I have updates directly from the White House. And I have updates from the banking groups who are doing absolutely everything in their power right now to kill this bill before it ever reaches a full Senate vote. So buckle up, because we are going through all of it right now. Let's start with the foundational update here, because this is where everything begins. The Senate Banking Committee is prepping a markup of the Clarity Act, and this was reported just 4 hours ago. Now, at the same time that news was breaking, Polymarket had the bill sitting at 79% odds to get signed into law, and then within 30 minutes it cratered down to 62%. Does somebody know something? That is the question. Now, for those of you who are newer to how this process works, a committee markup is huge. This is the moment where senators sit down together, they go line by line through the bill, they propose and vote on amendments, and ultimately they either vote the bill out of committee, moving it forward, or they kill it right there. The fact that we've gotten to a markup at all means the bill has already cleared a significant bar. It has enough support to move forward. That doesn't mean the fight is over. In fact, as you're about to find out, the fight is getting more intense by the hour. But getting here is genuinely significant. Now let me walk you through the detailed breakdown from Eleanor Terrett, who has been covering this as closely as anyone in the game right now. Here's what she's reporting this morning. In what is being called a pivotal week for U.S. crypto policy, the Senate Banking Committee has officially scheduled the long-awaited markup of the Clarity Act. This is the next major step toward passing comprehensive crypto market structure legislation into law. As Crypto in America first reported last week, Senate Banking Committee Chairman Tim Scott, Republican out of South Carolina, announced the markup on Friday evening. It is scheduled for Thursday, May 14th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. According to the committee memo, the final legislative text is expected to be released today, Monday, and senators must submit any proposed amendments before the close of business tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, here's some important context. It has been nearly 4 months to the day since the first Senate Banking Committee markup was scrapped at the absolute last minute. And the reason it was scrapped? 11th-hour objections from industry leaders, most notably Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, who argued at the time that the bill deferred too much regulatory authority to traditional banks and that it could effectively kill stablecoin rewards programs for everyday consumers. That was a major objection, and it stopped the bill cold. So what changed? A lot, actually. Coinbase executives now appear to be content with where the bill has landed. Following months of intense, sometimes contentious negotiations between crypto lobbyists, banking lobbyists, trade groups, the White House, Senate staffers, and lead negotiators, Senator Tom Tillis and Senator Angela Alsobrooks. That is a lot of people at the table, and somehow they got to a place where Coinbase is no longer blocking the bill. That is significant progress. But, and this is a big but, certain factions within the banking sector, particularly those with consumer-facing arms, are still mounting a last-minute push to revise the stablecoin yield language before Thursday's markup. Banking trade groups representing some of those institutions sent a letter to Senate banking leadership on Friday. In that letter, they argue that the current compromise language still leaves open room for crypto rewards programs that could replicate yield, essentially functioning like interest-bearing bank deposits, and that this would encourage deposit flight away from traditional banks. They've proposed additional revisions. They say their changes would go further in preventing stablecoins from competing directly with bank savings products. Now here's the important thing, and I want you to pay close attention to this part, because it tells you a lot about where the real power lies in this negotiation right now. Despite Senators Tillis and Alsobrooks both signaling in a joint statement last week that the stablecoin yield issue had effectively been settled, the banking groups are still pushing back. But here's the response they're getting from inside the Senate. One Senate aide who reviewed the letter that the banking trade groups sent, and remember, this is someone who works inside the Senate, described the effort to crypto in America as, and I'm quoting directly here, pretty milquetoast. That's not a compliment. That's Washington speak, for nobody is taking this seriously. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have largely shifted their attention away from the stablecoin yield issue and are now focused on other outstanding matters in the bill, particularly the ethics language, which suggests the banking holdouts are going to struggle to reopen this debate at the committee level. Now, could the issue come back up? Yes. Once the legislation reaches the full Senate floor, banking groups could try to win over senators who weren't on the banking committee and don't have the full context of these negotiations. That's a real risk. But at the committee level, that fight appears to be over. The key negotiators have closed it. Now let's talk about what the banking lobby is actually doing in response to this, because this is where it gets really interesting. Over the weekend, Rob Nichols, the president and CEO of the American Bankers Association, sent a letter to member bank CEOs across the country. And in this letter, he is urging them to take immediate action ahead of Thursday's markup. He's asking bank CEOs to call Senate offices directly. He's asking them to mobilize their employees. He's asking them to use an online advocacy portal to flood senators with letters opposing the current text of the bill. And here's the key quote from that letter. He wrote, "We believe that the committee members may not be fully aware of the risks to the economy posed by the stablecoin loophole. Your immediate engagement can make a difference." Now, let me be very clear about what is happening here, because I think it's important that you understand why the banks are so worked up about this. What the banking groups are fundamentally arguing is this: they don't want consumers to be able to take their money that is currently sitting in a savings account earning essentially nothing, and move it to a crypto platform where they can earn 3, 4, maybe even 5% through stablecoin yield programs. That's the loophole they're screaming about. People potentially making more money on their own savings. Think about that for a second. Now, when Senator Patrick McHenry, a key figure in these negotiations from the White House side, saw that letter from Rob Nichols, he had something to say, and he said it publicly. He posted, and I'm paraphrasing here, "I specifically requested the attendance of Mr. Nichols and other bank trade CEOs at meetings we hosted back in February, meetings specifically designed to resolve the stablecoin rewards issue. They refused to show up." He then added, "I guess the White House is beneath them." And then he said something that I think cuts right to the heart of this whole debate. He noted that the banks are essentially defending a position that is very, very difficult to defend in public. Because when you strip away all the technical language and all the regulatory jargon, what they are really arguing is, don't let consumers earn more money on their own savings. Keep their money in our banks. Let us use it. And give them nothing in return. That is not a position you want to be defending on the front page of a newspaper. And I think the banks know it, which is probably part of why they're working the phones behind the scenes rather than making public statements. All right, now let's get to some genuinely good news. Because in the middle of all this chaos, there was a significant development that flew a little bit under the radar this weekend. Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and one of the most influential voices in the entire Senate, is now on board with the Clarity Act. Specifically, Grassley has signed off on the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act provisions, commonly referred to as the BRCA, and Section 1960 language, which deals with protections for software developers who are accused of facilitating illegal transactions. This matters because it was a sticking point. Law enforcement groups had raised concerns that software developers could potentially be held criminally liable for how other people use the software they build. Senator Grassley helped find language that addresses those law enforcement concerns while also protecting legitimate software developers. Senator Cynthia Lummis, one of the most prominent crypto advocates in the Senate, responded to this news with a statement. She said, "Thank you, Chuck Grassley, for ensuring the BRCA and Section 1960 protections for software developers are included in the Clarity Act while giving law enforcement the tools they need." The Clarity Act is the most pro-law enforcement digital assets bill Congress has ever considered. Let's get this done. The deals will continue until clarity improves, and they are being made. Now let's talk about the Democrat side of this equation, because this is where the complexity really starts to ramp up. Some market analysts and legislative observers are already anticipating that the Clarity Act will advance out of committee largely on party lines, meaning Republicans vote yes, Democrats vote no. And the primary reason cited for Democratic opposition at the committee level is the ethics language in the bill, specifically the issue of potential conflicts of interest tied to President Trump and his family's crypto holdings and dealings. Let me be very clear about how this affects the math. If every Republican on the Senate Banking Committee votes yes and every Democrat votes no, the bill can still advance out of committee. Arithmetically, it works. The Republicans have enough votes to move it forward without a single Democratic vote. But here's the problem, and this is the part that has people like Galaxy Digital's head of research, Alex Thorne, genuinely worried. To pass a final vote on the full Senate floor, you generally need 60 votes to clear a filibuster. There are currently 53 Republican senators. You can do the math. You need at least 7 Democrats to cross the aisle and vote yes on final passage. And if this bill comes out of committee with 0 Democratic support because the ethics fight poisoned the well, it becomes significantly harder to get those 7 Democratic votes on the floor. Alex Thorne said it plainly. While it's possible the bill could still succeed, the odds of ultimate Senate passage are certainly diminished if no Democrats vote in favor during the committee markup. So which Democrats are we watching specifically? Let me break it down for you. First, Senator Adam Schiff. He has been one of the most vocal critics on the ethics issue, the Trump family crypto conflict of interest question, and he has dug in hard on this position in recent days. He is not budging easily. Second, Senator Ruben Gallego. Now here's an interesting one. Gallego has been considered something of an ally to the crypto industry more broadly. He's advocated for advancing the Clarity Act in the past. But it remains genuinely unclear whether he will ultimately break with his Democratic colleagues on the ethics issue. That issue is becoming an increasingly important focal point for the Democratic Party as a whole. And breaking from your party on something like that has political consequences. Third, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. She has been deep in the weeds on the DeFi-related provisions of the bill, specifically the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act and Section 1960. Industry sources suggest that Senator Grassley's sign-off on those provisions could help ease some of her concerns, but it remains unclear whether it will be enough to get her to a yes vote by Thursday. And finally, Senator Mark Warner. He was also a key negotiator on the DeFi provisions and will be another one to watch very closely as Thursday approaches. The good news is, even if no Democrats vote yes in committee, the bill moves forward. But the strategic calculus for the floor vote gets harder with every Democrat who remains in the no column. Now I want to walk you through the actual text of the ABA letter, because I think it's important that you hear exactly what Rob Nichols wrote to bank CEOs across the country on a Sunday morning. On Mother's Day, no less. He opens by saying, and this is a direct quote, to ABA members and bank CEOs. First, Happy Mother's Day to all the moms receiving this email. I'm sorry to intrude on your Sunday. And then he immediately pivots to an urgent mobilization request. He writes, I'm reaching out to make every bank leader in this country aware of the urgent advocacy fight that requires your immediate engagement. He goes on to say that while the ABA does want Congress to establish rules for the crypto industry, and he's careful to say they support digital asset legislation in principle, the current version of the Clarity Act still does not, in their view, adequately prevent crypto companies from offering interest-like rewards on payment stablecoins. He argues that without additional changes, the legislation would unnecessarily incentivize the movement of bank deposits into payment stablecoins, and that this poses risks to both economic growth and financial stability. And then he closes with a very direct call to action. We need your help to drive this message home before senators consider this legislation. Please contact your senators and ask them to close this loophole before the bill moves forward. Please encourage your employees to do the same. They've even set up a pre-written letter system. You click a link, you put in your email, and it sends a pre-drafted message to your senator automatically. That's how organized this effort is. Now, here's the part where I speak directly to you. Because this matters, the banking lobby is organized. They're mobilized. They've got pre-written letters. They've got bank CEOs making calls. They've got employees being encouraged to contact senators. And what do we have? We have you. And we have the numbers. Because here's what the polling data actually says about where the American public stands on the Clarity Act. According to recent survey data, 52% of voters say they support the Clarity Act. Only 11% oppose it. Now I know some of you are looking at those numbers and asking, What happened to the other 37%? Those are largely people who aren't sure, or who aren't yet familiar enough with the legislation to have a formed opinion. They haven't decided yet. But look at what we know. 52% support, 11% oppose. That is not even close. The American public wants this bill. And it gets even more striking. 70% of people surveyed say the United States should have already passed crypto legislation. 7 out of 10 Americans. They're not asking whether we should do this. They're asking why we haven't done it yet. So when the banking lobby is telling senators that this bill is dangerous and risky, you need to be on the other end of that phone saying, "We want this. We support this. Get it done." Now here's a development that tells you a lot about how seriously the crypto industry is taking this week. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong is scheduled to speak at a Senate Republican steering lunch on Wednesday, the day before the markup. According to multiple sources familiar with the plan, Armstrong's appearance is directly tied to the Thursday markup of the Clarity Act. He played a central, and at times controversial, role in shaping this legislation. Remember, he was the one who helped stop the previous version of the bill back in January, arguing it gave too much power to banks. Now he's going to walk into a room full of Republican senators the day before the vote and tell them, "I'm okay with this bill. Let's get it done." That is a powerful signal, and it's exactly the kind of endorsement that could give hesitant Republican senators the confidence they need to vote yes on Thursday. Armstrong has done the negotiating. He's helped shape the final text. And now he's going to show up in person and say, "This is the version we support." That matters. That's leadership. And it's the kind of move that can actually move votes. Now I want to walk you through a very important exchange that happened at Consensus 2026 in Miami last week. Because there was a clip from Patrick McHenry that I hadn't seen until today, and I think it contains some critically important information. He was asked directly, "Where do we stand with the Clarity Act right now?" And here is what he said: "We've made a tremendous amount of progress recently. I would say we've had a big breakthrough on a number of issues. Obviously, the stablecoin rewards yield language, getting that resolved, and some of the work we've done on the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, working with Senator Grassley and the Judiciary Committee staff, closing out those two issues were huge steps forward. We're definitely trending in the right direction. I'm very optimistic about being able to mark up this bill next week, as you heard from Senator Lummis yesterday. Thursday is the day. We're working behind the scenes to close out all the remaining issues. But we're looking good right now." He said, "We're looking good right now." That is the White House crypto policy team. That is not a hype statement. That is someone who is inside the room telling you the direction this is headed. But that's not all he said. He was also asked about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and this is where it got really interesting. He said the White House will be making an announcement about the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the digital asset stockpile in the coming weeks. He confirmed that President Trump's executive order was, quote, "really the starting gun for the agencies to go implement." And he said his deputy, Harry Young, has been leading the interagency effort to get this on solid footing. And then he said something that I think is genuinely profound: properly safeguarding these assets, making sure that the United States leads on Bitcoin and other critical assets, and starts to view these in the same way that we would view gold, or that we treat our own currency. It's critically important for our national security. President Trump was really the first one to come along and say that economic security, a lot of the issues in that space, are issues of national security. One of the pillars that underwrites American hegemony around the world, in addition to our military and our judicial system, is our place in global financial markets. And these assets are the new infrastructure, the new architecture of the financial future. That is the White House, talking about Bitcoin and digital assets as instruments of national security and American global leadership. Now, I love everything Patrick McHenry said there. I genuinely do. And the language around national security and global financial leadership, that is the right framing. That is the argument that needs to be made. But I do want to add something here, because I think it's important and I don't think it gets said enough. If this strategic reserve and these digital asset stockpile announcements end up being exclusively about Bitcoin, I'm going to be a little disappointed. Not because Bitcoin isn't important, it absolutely is, but because the crypto industry is bigger than just Bitcoin. I want to see language that specifically supports American-made or American-aligned crypto assets. I want to see XRP in that conversation. I want to see Solana. I want to see Cardano. I want to see Chainlink. I want to see Stellar. These are assets with real utility, real infrastructure, and real communities built around them. If the U.S. government is going to lead the world in digital assets, and I believe it should, then that leadership needs to benefit the entire ecosystem. Not just Bitcoin holders. Every American in this space deserves to see their assets included in that vision. So I'm watching very closely for what those specific announcements say, and I'll keep you posted the moment I know more. Alright, let me bring this all together for you. Because there is a lot happening right now, and I want to make sure you leave this video with complete clarity on where things stand. Here is the state of play as of today. The Senate Banking Committee markup of the Clarity Act is scheduled for Thursday, May 14th at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That is happening. The stablecoin yield debate, which nearly killed this bill back in January, appears to be closed. The lead negotiators, Tillis and Alsobrooks, have signed off. The banking lobby is still pushing, but they're getting very little traction at the committee level. Their fight is being described internally as milquetoast. Senator Chuck Grassley is now on board, which helps address the DeFi and software developer protections provisions, and could bring Senator Cortez Masto closer to a yes vote. The ethics issue remains the biggest wildcard. Democrats on the committee are dug in over the Trump family conflict of interest concerns. The bill can pass committee on party lines, but that makes the 60-vote floor threshold harder to reach. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong will be at a Senate GOP steering lunch on Wednesday, signaling his support for the current version of the bill. The White House has confirmed that strategic Bitcoin reserve and digital asset stockpile announcements are coming in the coming weeks. That is a big deal. And 70% of Americans think the U.S. should already have crypto legislation. 52% support the Clarity Act. Only 11% oppose it. The American people are with us on this. Now, the banking lobby is flooding Senate offices with calls and letters right now, and if you want this bill to pass, if you believe in financial freedom, in the right to earn a fair return on your own savings, in American leadership in the global financial system, then you need to make your voice heard too. Call your senator, send a message, let them know where you stand, because the other side is organized, and they are loud. And the only way we win this is if we are louder. I am going to continue bringing you updates on the Clarity Act every single day, every day, for as long as it takes. If something breaks tonight, you'll hear about it tomorrow morning. That is my promise to you. If this video helped you understand what's happening, please hit that like button right now. It makes an enormous difference in getting this information out to more people who need to hear it. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you want me to cover next. And make sure you are subscribed, because the hottest and freshest crypto news 7 days a week, no days off, no sleep. That is what we do here. Thank you so much for your support, everyone. I'm Crypto Sensei. Aloha.